Welcome to Mormonish, where we are finding ways to live a joyful life on the other side of Mormonism. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And this is our very first episode.
Yeah, that's why we're calling it Meet the Mormonishes.
I love that. A little pun on.
Fun to get us started. That's right.
Exactly. No, I love it. So, welcome everybody. The idea for this podcast came about because we started to interact and meet with all kinds of people that are on the other side of Mormonism. And by that, we mean maybe you're a post-Mormon, or maybe you consider yourself an ex-Mormon, or maybe you're a nuanced Mormon and you're still attending church, but you're gravitating toward being involved in other projects. And we thought there are so many wonderful people out there doing so many incredible things. Is there a place where we could talk to these people and learn more about their stories? And we thought, why don't we just start a place like that and call it Mormonish?
There you go. I've met so many neat people since I've got out of the church. And when I first left the church, it was very difficult because I didn't find community. I couldn't find people who shared the same belief or the same struggles that I had as I was leaving. And once I started finding that community, it was so helpful. And so the idea behind Mormonish is that we want to be able to find those people, show what they're doing, show the excitement that they're bringing. They might be doing service. They might be doing activities that they now have time to do now that they're out of the church. And they might
That's a good point.
Definitely, you've got that second Saturday now, or they might be growing in other ways. And we want to highlight that and project that in our podcast. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited to meet these people and to help other people to see the way to go through that we can thrive after Mormonism.
No, I love that idea. I'm so excited about it too. And not only talking to people, but also talking about topics and subjects that might be relevant to people that are finding life, creating community, and moving on after Mormonism. So I think we have a lot of things to cover, and I think it's going to be a wonderful journey. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I think we've all left, we all still have relatives or family or siblings who are still in the church. And so the church is still a big part of our life, even if we may have left it, even if we may be angry at sometimes, we still have left it, but it's still a part of our life. And that's why we call this Mormonish, because we're Mormonish. It's always going to be a part of our life. And that's what we want to include in there. So we thought that, maybe the best way to start our first podcast might be to introduce ourselves and kind of tell everyone who we are. And Rebecca, you've been around doing quite a few things since you've been outside of Mormonism, I guess you could say. You started a book club. You started the Good Book Club, and also then you spun that off and you're doing the Good Media Club, which are web pages and a club that's been going on for quite some time, 2.5 years. And you're also doing several podcasts. You're doing Mormon Media Review with Steve Pinecker. And recently, you're about to start doing the Mormon Stories book club that you're going to be starting up. So you've been very busy. Our listener might know who you are.
I love that. Listener. Even that might be a little bit optimistic to begin with.
Well, my wife is going to listen, so we've got at least one listener.
Okay, and I think I can convince my husband to listen, so maybe we'll have 2 listeners to begin with.
2 downloads. When we get to 3, we'll know we've made some progress.
That's it. We're shooting for the big 3. So come on, everybody, tune in, like and subscribe.
That's right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you start into this whole media conglomeration that you're part of now?
Oh my goodness, I'm a conglomeration. No, well, when you read that list of things that I'm involved in, it sounds like all I do is sit in front of my computer, and maybe that is true, but no, my story is kind of interesting, maybe different from others who are on the other side of Mormonism. I was raised by very Orthodox Mormon parents. I was raised in the church, but I always considered myself PMO, and that's physically in, mentally out, meaning that although we were doing everything in the church, everything you could possibly imagine, I just never really believed it or was on board with it. But of course, I never knew I could do anything differently, if that makes sense.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean,
Yep.
you understand that, right? I mean, especially being a girl or a woman in the church in the 70s and 80s, you just sort of went with the flow. And my family, we were very devout. ate only food storage, made furniture out of food storage. I know some of you know what I'm talking about on that one. Very little access to outside media. We could watch things from the meeting house library. I never knew who Gilligan was or Scooby-Doo until I was much older, this kind of upbringing.
And I have to
Homemade
say, you know more about Mormon media than anyone I have ever met. You can name any video, any church video, you can nail it, and you'll know the names of the people. It's incredible to see. So you've really got a great knowledge of that.
Well, that's because those were the only things I was allowed to watch. So, like I said, a lot of religious knowledge, but otherwise not so much. So, so being raised that way, and just never really believing anything that I was hearing, which is so funny. And maybe people can't understand that. Maybe there are some of you out there that do understand. But my dad has a funny story that I told before. To him, it's a funny story of him helping me give my tithing to the bishop when I was under 5 years old. I was very little. And I said to him afterwards, well, how do you know he doesn't steal that? And to my dad, that's a very funny story. But to me, I say, way to go, little critical thinker. It may not be what you think,
There
But
you go.
that being said, being raised in the 70s and 80s church, it was actually wonderful as far as activities and things like that went. And I never felt the pull to leave. Truth claims weren't really a thing back then. So, just a lot of fun, friends and road shows and talent shows and dance festivals and our young men, young women activities. It was called Mutual back then. Of course, that dates me. We're basically like, hey, do you want to go hang out at the river and go water skiing? I mean, it was a lot of fun. And so just never really thought of doing anything else. I went to BYU. I got my master's in library and information science, hence all the book clubs that I started.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I worked at the BYU library for, I think, a decade and a half.
Wow.
And I got
that must have been fascinating. Did you work with any of the special collections or any of the those things or find anything while you were looking through the books
that I think we may do a whole episode on that, because that's kind of how I first started to learn that there might be something different to church history that I wasn't really aware of before. And so I think we'll save that part of the story maybe for an episode of Mormonish, because there's a lot. But I married in the temple at the time. I raised a family, but I always was, I don't know, in but not of the church, if that makes sense. I was always finding ways, especially when I first had kids. Oh, my children aren't feeling well. I guess I need to go home. So I was always just kind of flitting around the edges of it, if that makes sense to you.
Yes.
And I just never really taken a hard look at it. Socially, that's what you did. I live in the heart of Utah County. So it was just much easier just to remain in, and there was really no reason not to. So the first time that I ever sort of had a little moment where I thought, oh my, this may not be something that's good or healthy for my family, is when my older son, who was just a teenager at the time, started showing great anxiety and stress over being at church and the high performance aspect of it, the high control, especially bishops' interviews. We may even want to do an episode on that kind of thing. I think a lot of our listeners now have experience with that kind of trauma. And so at one point, I really did have to make the decision, my child's mental health or having him go to church. And I instantly said, oh, you can just stay home. And at that point, he's at home, I'm attending, and I'm at church going, oh, my little guy's at home. I better go home and check on him. It started giving me some distance, and it started me down a path of looking at things in a different way. So at that point, I would only accept callings in primary, because I figured that was sort of a safe space. I don't feel that way now. I have some definite views on primary and indoctrination that I'm planning all our episodes right here just by talking. So
we've got a month's worth right here.
Hurry, write this down so we don't forget. So I was really good at showing up at church after sacrament meeting, because I didn't want to attend, and sort of pretending to people in the hall that I had been there, just saying, oh, wasn't that talk on the Book of Mormon good? As long as I said Book of Mormon, I pretty much had covered it. Someone was bound to have mentioned the Book of Mormon. So, and then going off to do my primary calling. And I just did this for a long time into my 50s, which is why sometimes I think my story, maybe it's tragic, that I never believed, yet I stayed for decades. And finally, I think I just got to a point and an age where I was able to give myself permission to say, you know what? I don't necessarily want to do this anymore. And I wonder what else there is that I could do on the other side of this. And so basically about a month or so before COVID, which is perfect timing. I've heard so many people say that COVID was such perfect timing for them. I just sent a text to the primary presidency and said, I think I'm going to be just taking a break and stepping away. And then of course, with COVID, that just turned into everyone taking a break, and that was it. So that's in a nutshell kind of where I arrived at where I am. But the focus of our show, of course, our program is going to be, what are we doing on the other side? And so my background in libraries and reading and book clubs, I started getting involved in post-Mormon social media on the different sites that are out there. And I started noticing that post-Mormons seem to be, oh my goodness, just avid readers. It's almost like they were playing catch up, if you know what I mean.
Those lazy learners that just don't read it
Oh,
all. Yes, and yet I find the same thing, that they're reading, they're studying, they're grabbing. They want the church to be true, but they just can't make it work.
yeah, no, they lazy learner. Oh, that just made me, we'll do another episode on that because
Yeah,
that was infuriating to me. Yeah. So, and not only were they reading about church history to try to arrive at what the hell happened,
yeah.
but they were also reading just every other topic, almost in a way of catching up. Because as you know, when you're deeply immersed in the church, there's a lot to read, but it's all in the church and approved sources. It's your, your lesson manuals and your ensign and your conference talks, your scriptures, come follow me. There's so much to read. It doesn't leave a lot of room for other things. And the church, I think, maybe sort of encourages you not to read a lot of other things because you might come across information that's a little, contradicting to what they're telling you. So I started weighing in on different books that people were reading on social media. And I had mentioned my background in librarianship, and somebody kind of dared me. They said, well, I dare you to start the first, I don't know if it's the first, but to start a post-Mormon book club. And for our listeners, this is how Landon and I actually connected. We met as random, anonymous people on Reddit because he was a person that said, well, I love to read and I would love to help with something like that. And then a few other people chimed in. Hopefully those people will also be guests on our show because they're amazing too. And we created what we called the Good Book Club, which is kind of a pun on, the good book. And we just kind of threw it out there. Does anybody want to read anything? Kind of with the idea. And Landon's wife, Melinda, actually came up with this phrase that's kind of our cornerstone of our book club, which is, now we know what we don't believe or believe as much. Now we need to figure out what we do believe. And we consider ourselves readers, and we do that through reading. And so we just kind of put the call out, and we have, gosh, I think we have almost 300 members on our rolls now. And we read a book a month, and we talk about topics, and all of it through the lens of Mormonism. So it was interesting to note that when we first started the book club, a lot of people, everybody wanted to read like No Man Knows My History or Rough Stone Rolling or, very Mormon centric topics. And then as we kind of move along, we just gravitate toward other things. What's going on in philosophy? What about geography, geology, art? Again, maybe playing catch up and working on your world view, your world perspective on the other side of Mormonism. So that's how I spent my time.
Yes, no, and we met all those people on Reddit, and none of them were mass murderers. It was everybody was
Yeah.
neat people. We just met so many neat people, and we have so many friends that we like to get with all over the country. That because the Good Book Club is virtual, so anyone anywhere in the country can join us. And so we've just met people all over the country. And anytime we travel, we try to go and meet with them because they've just become such friends and such a good community. So you've really created something wonderful there. I'm excited every month when we do the book club. So it's been
and right back at you for having created something, because that's exactly right. It took a lot of work behind the scenes, and Landon's wife Melinda jumped in and helped, and my husband Tom jumped in to help, and we talked about our other founding member. His name is Bruce. He lives in California, and he helps with all of our tech. But it almost seems like people on the other side of Mormonism are also looking for a place to have community and looking for a way to help. I mean, everybody is so generous and wonderful in the ways that they're helping with this project. And again, another reason why we started Mormonish, because we thought we would love to hear more people's story and hear more about what they're doing. So
don't you think it's neat when we do a mix and mingle after our book club? We do the books, and then we just sit around and talk with all the different members, and we get the new people, and it's amazing as new people come in. Some are really hurting and struggling, and others are there just excited to find a club. But everyone's story is just so unique and so interesting. But everyone welcomes them with open arms, and it's a group that I wouldn't have previously associated with. We've got married people, we've got single people, we have gay people, we have trans people, and it's given me a perspective that I never would have thought of before. And I see things from so many different perspectives now. So that's what we hope to bring to this is opening up and looking at those other perspectives and see how that turns out for us.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. And you just have the opportunity to meet so many different people from wide and varied backgrounds and places and ages, and everyone gets along and you can learn so much from everybody. So it's absolutely wonderful. So now enough about me, right? Now I'll ask Landon the same question back. I'll get all serious like an Oprah moment. So tell us your story, Landon.
Oh, my story.
Fascinating. So you're going to want to listen to this for sure.
Yeah, no, I don't think my story's that fascinating, but I'll share what I do. I think this is the part where usually on these podcasts you say, "Oh, I came from Mormon stock." In my case, it was maybe more the Mormon stockade. We've got a lot of people who are a little iffy. Maybe I do have relatives who have served some time, so I definitely came from a family that wasn't a long line of Mormons. However, my parents were strong Mormons, and I had a wonderful childhood. I can't say enough. The neighbors, the people, and just like you said, growing up, there were so many activities that I was involved with, and the church then would do the road shows and the scouting programs and the camping, and I just enjoyed my childhood. Eventually, you graduate from high school and it's time to go on to a mission. And I followed all the steps that you're supposed to follow. I got my Eagle Scout when I was 13 years old. I did all the priesthood advancements. I was a very motivated person. I wanted to fly. Aviation was something I wanted to do. So at 16 years old, I went out, I got my pilot's license. I was working on that. Decided, hey, I can't afford this flying. So I applied for an ROTC scholarship, and I got an ROTC scholarship to help pay for all of that as I went through school. And I thought this is a great way to pay for flying in the future, is have the military take care of it. So I went in with that understanding. I went up to school, and then I had to take a break because, as everyone knows, 19 years old, back then it was 19, it's time for a mission. And I had to check the box. I always knew I was going to go. And
you were a box checker.
A box checker.
I'm
absolutely.
Sure nobody out there can relate to that.
No,
yet.
No one. The church doesn't at all put a plan that you sit there and check the marks off. But that was exactly what I was doing. So it was time to go on a mission. Never had a question about whether I was going to go on a mission. And so I turned in my papers, and I remember the day the call came and everyone's excited. Then it came in the mail. You didn't get these emails, and the post office would actually call. I'm from a Mormon town, they'd call, your mission calls here at 6 a.m, and you run down and get it. And it was so exciting.
So dramatic. It's just so dramatic.
It was. We didn't have the big get-togethers everyone has now, but the family got together and everything. And I opened it up and got my call, and the Lord has called you to serve in the Indianapolis, Indiana mission. And I just went, oh, someone made a mistake. Bum, bum. Yeah. It's like someone made a mistake. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, because I was so, I was going to be in the military. I was going to be a pilot. I love to travel. I love adventure. Certainly they're going to send me somewhere adventurous, or, I went to Indiana. So
no offense to any of our listener in Indiana, please.
No, our listener in Indiana. That's right. So I did my thing. I went, got out in the mission field. And once I got serving, I realized, yeah, the Lord did make a mistake. I should not have been in Indiana.
So that was your breaking moment. Is that what
it never really connected with me? There were some wonderful families that I met there. But as far as teaching there was just the baptisms rate were so low, and there was just nobody there to teach, and it was pretty disappointing, quite frankly. In fact, when I came home from my mission, I'm like, I've got to give a talk on something that I've been doing for the last 2 years, but I don't have any really faith promoting stories. So I ended up giving my homecoming talk on Satan and the power of Satan, because that is what I saw in the mission
Well, there you go.
so
That'll
much.
get
So
it.
I thought it was a brilliant way to get around it. So anyway, that's what I gave. And so after that, I went to college, and of course I had to check the next box, which obviously is marriage. So I met my wife when I went away to school at Utah State. We met, we married, and as we got close to graduation, of course, next checked box, you got to have the child. So we had a child just before I graduated. But I ran into a problem. That flying I was trying to do, well, I went to the military, and you kind of have to put in what you want to do. And I didn't get selected for flying. I got selected for communications because of my eyesight. So
Oh no.
I ended up not getting to fly. And I ended up, even though I had all my ratings and everything, I ended up going into the military. And that was a growing experience for me, because we moved away right away. And then I got my assignment to Korea, and I went to Korea, had to leave my child behind, had to leave my wife behind for a year, and went to Korea. And then when I came home, I went to Fort Lewis in Washington, and as a 25-year-old second lieutenant, I got put in the bishopric. So I'm 25 years old, high priest, right away, and started serving in the bishopric. And all of the people from all the ROTCs from across the country would come to Fort Lewis in the summer to train. And I was responsible for conducting those services when they'd come. And so it was quite an experience from that standpoint. But after a couple of years, I just figured it wasn't right for a family. And I moved, we moved to the Portland area. And when we did that, I got a new calling. I was the early morning seminary teacher. So I got to spend time doing early morning seminary and doing all of those things. And I have to say, I have always been all in. I was about as TBM as you come. True believing Mormon, for those who don't know.
So we were absolutely the opposite. I was a
Yes.
never believing, just going through the motions, and you were all on board.
And I think that's one of the great things on this podcast, is that we can see it. We'll get to see two perspectives, someone who really wasn't believing, and then me, who was all in. And then my shelf just broke, because I studied a lot, for my seminary classes, and for the teaching I did. I served in several bishoprics. I was all in, and I was all believing. But one time I was just sitting in sacrament meeting or at Sunday school, and we were talking, and we are going through the book of Abraham, and I was looking at those little facsimiles, that they have in the book.
It's the only interesting thing to look at, right?
Yeah, you
The
got to do
pictures
something
of the
to
Book
keep.
of Mormon and the Egyptian. Really, it's the only interesting thing to do. I think we all entertained
I
ourselves.
think we all do that. Look at the maps in the back of the Bible while the class is going on. Yep, that's so. I was looking through those, and I just seen a show the day before on the Rosetta Stone, and how people could read, how we learned to read Egyptian. That prior to about the 1840s or 1850s, there was hardly anyone in the world who could read Egyptian. And so I said, I thought I was brilliant. I thought I was the first person who ever came up with this idea. I'm going, well, this is Egyptian, and Joseph Smith translated the Egyptian. And since we know that's true, why don't we get an Egyptologist to look at this and tell us what it says?
Famous last
words.
Oh, my
so
goodness.
I came home from church. I got on the slow internet, the ding, the AOL internet that you did back in the day. And I looked it up, and I'm like, I said, I'm going to go to the BYU website, because I don't trust the other websites, obviously. And I went to the BYU website, and I looked it up, and I found out that they did know what the translation was, that Egyptologists had already looked at it, and that they had translated it, and I could read exactly what it said. And boy, that concerned me. That really broke my shelf at that point. So that's kind of where it started. And from that point, I started, I took 4 years where I just studied everything I could find. And I said, I'm not going to look at church books, but I'm not going to look at things that are against the church. I'm just going to look at secular books that talk about history, that talk about religion, that talk about linguistics, that talk about DNA, the anthropology, archaeology. And I just started reading everything I could. And I started finding that in the sciences, everything lined up. All these books were complementing each other, but they weren't doing the same thing with the Book of Mormon to me. And so that's what really broke my shelf. And so after several years, 4 years, I took every one of the standard works and spent a year and studied books that were related to that, the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Book of Mormon, and just things that happened in that time frame. And after I found that out, I just had come to the realization, this is not what it appears to be. And so I had to tell my wife that, and I went in and that's the first time I didn't know what hyperventilate, I've always seen the hyperventilation in a bag, but when I told her I don't believe anymore, she started hyperventilating and it was a difficult.
Well, you basically told her we're not going to be together.
Yeah, that's what she said. Yep.
You really are
our
taking
family is
yeah,
gone.
you're basically taking everything away. So that is a panic attack moment. And I think as we talk to other people, many of them have had experiences like this, either themselves, if their spouse left first, or telling someone. So yeah, it's a rough moment.
It is a rough road. And I had a missionary out at the time. I had two other sons who were going to be going on missions. And so she asked me not to tell the kids. And I had to, you have that, as the father, I feel like I need to protect them. I feel like they should know this before they make these decisions in their life. But on the other hand, I'd made an agreement that this is how we were going to raise our children. And they had girlfriends who were LDS and they had their friends and they were expecting a mission call and all of that. So I ended up kind of just standing back and saying, okay, I won't say anything. But eventually there comes that point where a child has to be blessed or mission call or temple. They're going to go to the temple, or you need to give them the priesthood. And we got to that point, and I finally had to say, there's no leaving Mormonism behind. People say, why don't you just leave? Well, it's not that easy. And I didn't want to tell my family, but I was forced out because I said, I can't go to the temple and I can't do this because I don't believe. And
there are those touch points that force you
into it.
Like when my middle son left on his mission, I didn't go through the temple with him. And nobody really, they knew that I was gravitating away, but they didn't really ask me. But that's a moment where you really have to show everybody what's private to you inside, because you're not allowed to do that. At worst, for a male, I think you're not going to be giving a blessing, or you're not going to be baptizing someone. But yeah, there are definitely milestones on the covenant path. If I can use one of my very least favorite phrases.
Yes, mine too.
Come up with lately. Another episode there. There are moments where your very private thoughts and journey that you're going through are forced out into the open.
Yeah, and that's what we realized is we can't do that. So just maybe 2 months before my son was going to go into the mission field, he was getting ready to go to the temple, and we just gathered around as a family, and I said, kids, I just don't believe anymore, and I'm not going to tell you why, but if you ever want to know, you're free to ask me, and I'll share with you what I can. I won't hide anything from you. And they didn't ask me anything from that point. My son ended up going on a mission to Romania. But then COVID happened, and COVID was one of those funny things, because I had gone to the bishop when I didn't show up for tithing settlement. The bishop called me in.
Another touchstone.
What's going on? Why aren't you coming in for tithing settlement? And he knew that I was kind of out and stuff, and he kept asking my wife, and she said, you need to talk to him. You need to talk to him. So he called me in, and I unloaded on him, and he's a wonderful man. He went to Indiana also on his mission, same mission. And so, at that point, I was pretty much out, and I stopped going. And And at first I thought, oh, this is kind of cool, that I've got Sundays to myself. The family's going off to church. This is great. And then COVID came and ruined it all. They ruined my faith journey. I'm
They
like,
came home, right? You had
all of a
just
sudden
discovered.
nobody had to go to church. I'm like, I went to church for 50 years, 3 hours a day. And all of a sudden they change it to 2 hours and nobody has to go. And they're all sitting at home through COVID. And I'm going, and now I'm going out on the lake and there's all my neighbors out on the lake when we'd go boating. And I'm going, it's Sunday. You should be in church. You guys are still in. Leave me alone.
Yeah, well, you were a trendsetter for maybe like a week,
A
and then
week,
everybody
yes.
else came in. Maybe you had that week. So, but you did discover Second Saturday, and
I
I think
discovered.
that kind of segues into some of the things that you've gotten more involved in
Yes.
on the other side, which is very exciting.
Yeah, actually, so my wife was still in and I was out. And so, you always have that, how do we deal with Sunday? What do we do with Sunday? And so we made an agreement and we said, you know what? I said, I love to travel. I love to do adventurous things. Why don't every other Sunday we'll go somewhere and we'll do something. And then we'll start a travel blog. And then on the Sunday that we're back, I can stay home and work on the travel blog and you can go to church. And so that was the compromise we made. And so we started a website. It was called utahwanderers.com. It's still there. Although I've been so busy, it doesn't get updated as often as it should.
You're doing the fun part, the travel, but not the actual entering.
Exactly. So we started posting things and about Utah and places to travel near Utah and around Utah. And COVID happened and you could still go out and do things. So that's what we did. We went and did things all through there and that just got us into adventure and we really enjoyed it. And then, as you said, one day I was going through Reddit and I saw your post about starting a book club and I contacted you and said, I'm really interested. This is my type of thing. I love to talk about these things. Yet I can't find anyone who will talk to me about these. Everyone ignores me. No, but I'm dangerous, I guess. And so we got together and we started the book club. And as that, not only did we start a book club, but we started a friendship. And we started inviting you and Tom, and we started going places and traveling. And it was amazing because we would go and we'd see the geology and we'd just sit and look and say, how did we believe that the earth was only 6,000 years old? Look at, you can see those layers in the geology as we'd go and ride ATVs, or we'd go to museums and we'd look at the dinosaurs and we'd look at the history and we'd go, wow, the evolution seems to be lining up. Look at these skulls. And it just opened our eyes so much. And that's what we're hoping to do with this podcast is to get people out there and say, there is so many exciting things to do. There are so many things out there to explore, to experience that you never experienced because you were always locked in a church on Sunday. And now you've got that second Saturday, you can get out there, you can do what you love to do. And you've got that extra day. You can go a lot further when you got an extra day and you don't have to be back on Saturday night to get everyone ready for church. And so
that is so
I've
true.
just
And
loved
extra resources too. I think also maybe if you're not,
and probably about 10% more resources than you had before.
10% would be it. Yeah. And when you say locked in the building on Sunday, I also feel you're also just locked, almost metaphorically. I always think about the pose at church. It's like this. Your head's down, your eyes are closed, your arms are folded into yourself. And when you come out on the other side, you open your eyes, you lift your head, you open your arms to receive. And there's so many different things out there, so many things to be involved in that you're almost like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we say when we always look at the mountains and as we look at the nature, as we go and explore these things, we always say, there's the post-Mormon's temple.
Yeah.
Nature, the earth, that's our post-Mormon temple.
Right.
This earth is gorgeous. It's incredible. There is so much here to experience and see. And God, being out in those outdoors and experiencing those things compared to Sunday and sitting in church saying, those people out on their boats, they must be hating today. They're miserable. Sure, they look happy, but they must be miserable. I testify that's not true.
Ooh, we're already starting to
I
testify.
love going boating. I love experiencing it.
You're kind of some hellfire and brimstone there.
I am.
But you wouldn't be thumping a Bible, maybe thumping a road map. I don't know what you're thumping.
That's right. That's right. But on the other hand, my family is still active. All of my, I have 40 nieces and nephews, and they're all going on missions. They're all doing their things, and I'm interested in that. I'm interested in their life, and I want to stay that way. So what changes happen in the church, they still affect me, even though I'm not attending. They still affect me all the time. In fact, my son just went to college at UVU, and the first thing he finds is, even though he doesn't go to church anymore, everything is set up by wards, their floors and everything. And they come and they get him, and everybody, all the girls he goes, that he hangs out with, they all go to the ward. And so it's hard to navigate that. And so that's what we're hoping to do, is find some ways and talk to people and say, what are you doing to navigate this? What resources have you found? What programs have you found? What adventures have you found that really have changed your life or made a difference?
No, and that you're absolutely right. And that's why when people say, why can't you leave it alone? We can't leave it alone because we're still Mormon-ish. There is no way around it. My youngest son just left on a mission. It's week 2 in the field for him. So we're surrounded, we're inundated, and we're happy and fine supporting family and friends in their journey. And we hope they would support us in our journey, and we can all get along and exist together and flourish together. So I think moving forward with the podcast, what we're going to do is we're going to have hopefully a lot of you on, just to talk about a little bit about your story and a little bit about what you're doing now. And we'll also address some topics that are relevant to being a post-Mormon or a nuanced Mormon. And I think it'll just go from there and hopefully just grow into something that's beneficial to people. I know it's going to be beneficial to us, even just preparing to do this and talking about it. I thought of so many things that I've never thought of before, and topics that we want to talk about, and just ways of thinking about things. So
yeah, this has been so fun trying to put this together. If we only have the 2 listeners ever, it was fun to get here. We really enjoyed putting this together.
Great to meet you too.
That's right. That's right. We want to meet both of them. But it's been so fun putting this together, and we want to hear from our listeners, and we hope to bring other topics in, that are interesting to post-Mormons. Whenever there's, stories about, we may discuss what's in the media or what's changed. And we'll try to be, try not, there's always that time you get a little bit, that's just frustrating, and it comes out a little bit, but we want to try to be positive and look at how that affects our lives and those of our loved ones, and talk about that. So I don't think we're going to limit it just to stories about people, but we want to talk about, things that are interesting to ex-Mormons, and things that, we've got some guests that we know also that we're hoping to bring on, that are maybe a little bit more known in the Mormon world, ex-Mormon world, but we want to meet them and see how they're doing and how they're flourishing. So it's going to be a little bit of everything, interviewing, talking, news, whatever seems interesting.
Maybe a musical number. I understand.
A musical.
Landon has an amazing voice.
But you, the drummer, you might play your drums or something.
True. I was in a garage band back in the day. We'll see.
A garage band drummer.
We'll take requests from our listener. That's what we'll do. So do you want to go through very quickly, Landon, how people could connect with us right up front? Because we'd love to hear your ideas or your thoughts, or what we can do differently, or what we should keep doing. We just want to start making connections. So how are the different ways that you can reach out to Mormonish?
Well, we're a little older, so this technology stuff is a little bit of a challenge. We're trying to get it all working. But we do have a Mormonish podcast on Facebook. So you can get to us on Facebook. We've also got Instagram account, Mormonish podcast on Instagram. We'll also have a website that we'll put out there, and we've got I'm trying to think of all the different platforms that we got
Well,
out
the
there.
podcast should be available on all the different platforms.
Yeah, on
We'll
all
have
the
our
different
YouTube
platforms.
channel, and then we'll be like on Apple and Spotify, and we'll put all that together.
Yep, we'll get it all out
And
there.
then we'll find a teenager to help us with TikTok.
That's right. TikTok, we're not there yet. So maybe that'll be another show, us trying to figure out how to do TikTok.
You know what? That would be wildly entertaining and frustrating for people, probably. Why can't these guys get it? You know, yeah,
that's right. Exactly so right. We'll put something on the end for those that have the video of where you can contact us. But hopefully you share it with your friends and say, hey, you know, this is a neat thing, and call us, let us know, email us. We'll put the email out there and let us know what you're doing. And hey, I know somebody who really is fascinating that you guys ought to talk to. That's what we want to hear, and that's who we want to talk to. So
yeah, we're crowdsourcing our content. The best way to do it, right? That's exactly it.
Absolutely.
So, wow. Well, this was not as painful as I thought it would be. It was just fun. It was just talking. So I had a great time. Did you have a good time?
Oh, I did. I was a little nervous at first. This being my first time. I'm not the pro you are. I haven't been on all the podcasts, but no, it was fun, and I look forward to it. So.
Yep. So we'll be signing off for our first episode here. So everybody keep joyful and look for more information and episodes and content from us. And please comment. Let us know what you'd like to see too. So
join us here on Mormonish.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.